Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
The Deputy Prime Minister responds to comments by the former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham.
PLP leader Philip Brave Davis is standing in firm opposition to that commercial enterprises bill.
The trial of former PHA chairman Frank Smith suffers a slight delay.
Our news is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. Topping news tonight, it turns out that document allocating responsibilities of Environment Minister Romuald Ferreira is legit after all. 2 days after the Prime Minister dismissed the document in its entirety after it went viral this weekend, his press secretary today admitted it's real, but that there was an error. They say to make it legit, put it in black and white. This past Sunday, Dr. Hubert Minnis dubbed this document placing the responsibility for 7 areas under the Prime Minister as fake news.
They have sent so many documents around by me, and you've said it yourself, fake news.
However, that document is real and was gazetted, as is the case with all cabinet publications. Our News visited the Department of Government Publications and obtained this document sent from Cabinet Office, which was gazetted and dated August 22, 2017. Our receipt shows $5 was paid for the document labeled as allocation of portfolio and announces for general information that the Honorable Romuald Sotario Ferreira is no longer charged with responsibility of the following: relations with the National Maritime Organization on matters relating to the environment, international convention, treaties, protocols, and agreements relating to the environment, reefs and blue holes, Plant Protection Act, wild animal and bird protection, natural history specimens, and the Bahamas Environment, Science, and Technology Commission. So, what happened? And why did the Prime Minister dismiss the widely circulated document as fake news? Today, his press secretary, Anthony Newbold, insisted there was an error.
In making the change to the portfolio allocation, matters that were listed next to best in the Gazette were included among those that were transferred to the office of the Prime Minister. Specifically those matters that properly belong to the Ministry of the Environment.
According to Newbold, Dr. Minnis did assume responsibility for the Best Commission, but not the other 6 areas listed. However, this response prompted many other questions from the media, like why wasn't the transfer of this responsibility made public, given the FNM's campaign promise of transparency? And why did the Prime Minister dismiss the document as fake news rather than clarifying that there was an error?
I don't know that he spoke to the entirety of the document.
He was generally asked about the document. He wasn't asked specifics.
He called the whole thing.
And he would be speaking, because as far as he was concerned, anything that said there was this wholesale transfer of responsibilities would have to be fake. Because as far as he's concerned, that's not what happened. That was never the intention.
I understand that point. That, yes.
If he thought it was important for him to make that announcement, he would have.
But the Prime Minister makes announcements when he goes to a school to take a picture. He's not going to make an announcement when he changes someone's portfolio.
So if he thought it was important, he would have made the announcement.
Newbold said it was a mistake, adding it's not the Prime Minister's job to scour the Gazette. But the press secretary's explanation didn't sit well with the media.
There are 7 items listed here. If the Prime Minister sought to call it fake, he would have known the 7 items, and he could have dismissed one of them, or the rest of them, the remaining 6. And
well, he chose to deal with it how he chose to deal with it. That's all I can say about that. He knew that he had best. Anything else was not something that he had to be concerned with.
But this clearly is a PR nightmare for you. How is the Prime Minister going to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again?
How do you ever make sure that no mistakes are ever made?
According to Newbold, this blunder will have to be corrected, but he could not say if anyone will be held responsible. The press secretary said he is certain Minnis would address this and several other issues in the near future.
The Prime Minister will decide how he wants to deal with this and other issues.
When did you find out about this?
I found out about it like everybody else when it was sent around on social media.
But you're the press secretary.
So what does that mean?
You should at least be abreast of what's happening.
There's no reason for me to know what's in the Gazette. Come on.
Well, Opposition Leader Philip Davis says it's his understanding that the Best Commission has been answering to the Office of the Prime Minister since August. Davis says he hears the Prime Minister claims and wonders if it needs to be double-checked.
Well, the Prime Minister says it's fake news. So if he says it's fake news, I trust what he says. But when you go to verify what he says is another story, because I'm advised that persons who work in best and in the environment, they suggest that they have to report to the Prime Minister's office. So I don't. So that is something that they'll have to reconcile. So he says it's not. He says it's fake news. Well, perhaps he ought to verify that it is.
The Deputy Prime Minister today addressing recent comments made by former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham, who came out against the controversial Commercial Enterprises Bill. Georgia Bain reports.
Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest says the notion that the Commercial Enterprises Bill seeks to put foreigners before Bahamians is nonsense, and the idea is for Bahamians to be the best.
We're all entitled to our view, but we must not try to sensationalize or to read into this bill things that do not exist.
On the heels of former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham's call for the Minister administration to reconsider the controversial Commercial Enterprises Bill and to make the necessary adjustments, Turnquest is warning those who don't understand the bill not to sensationalize it, and says Ingraham's comments are proof that the government needs to do a better job educating Bahamians.
Well, I don't know if he attacked it. I think he has some concerns, like a lot of Bahamians have some concerns. Certainly, we have to do a better job at educating the Bahamian public as to what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. Again, there's no mystery in this bill. There's no secrets or backroom dealings with respect to what we're trying to accomplish.
The bill would allow foreigners or Bahamians to receive economic concessions if they establish specified types of businesses in the Bahamas with an investment of no less than $250,000. Such businesses would be entitled to a specified number of work permits for executives, managers, and people with specialized knowledge.
It's about job creation. This is what this is about for Bahamians. This is about creating opportunities for Bahamians that do not exist today. And so when I hear this thing about the government favoring foreigners over domestic business, that is nonsense.
Turnquest says the truth is, if the Bahamas was able to grow its economy on its own, then we would have done that already. But instead, the country faces downgrade after downgrade.
And in fact, we've had negative growth over the last 5 years. It's unsustainable. When we talk about disadvantaging Bahamian investors, the truth of the matter is that if we could do this by ourselves, we would have done it. We cannot grow this economy by ourselves. We need foreign direct investment. It is a fact because we are an open economy.
Reporting for our News, I'm Georgia Bain.
As opposition to the Commercial Enterprises Bill mounts, Leader of the Opposition, Philip Brave Davis, is doubling down on his assertion that the PLP would repeal the bill. Jared Higgs has that.
I say it'll be a grave mistake for them to enact it in the present form that it is in.
Opposition leader Philip Brave Davis says the Commercial Enterprises Bill is a letdown to Bahamian workers and a red carpet to foreign investors looking to build their upper management staff with non-Bahamian expertise.
If a foreign entrant into our business community comes in at a capital of $250,000, then how could the Bahamian benefit from that? Particularly in a business at a size of $250,000, they'll be able to bring in their personnel, whatever you guide them as their management, executive management, however you may call them. The bill purports to permit such investor to bring in their own personnel. There's nothing in the bill, for example, that even if they were going to allow them to bring in personnel, what ratio of Bahamian must be employed to permit them to bring in.
Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest yesterday warned that the opposition's threat to repeal the bill, should the PLP return to government, could shake confidence in the country's investment climate. For his part, Davis says the bill doesn't promote Bahamian entrepreneurship. Instead, he says the legislation seems to actually create a barrier to investment for Bahamians that didn't previously exist.
At the moment, a Bahamian, if he wants to invest in any business, he doesn't need to get a certificate. He doesn't need to get permission from the investment board. He can just go and do it freely. Now, it appears that for a Bahamian to now get into a particular kind of business and to operate that business in a particular zone, he now needs to get permission to do so.
The list of the bill's detractors seems to grow by the day, with former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham becoming one of the harshest critics when he called the bill's $250,000 investment threshold too low and likened the liberal work permit provision to 1950s-era policy. The Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employers Confederation says if the bill becomes law, Bahamian businesses may not be able to compete with foreign counterparts due to the high cost of labor, capital, human resources, and energy. Now, speaking to what he believes would be some of the practical results of the policy, Davis predicts a conflict of interest between ministries, with new powers of zoning vested in the Minister of Financial Services.
They have now added another layer of bureaucracy because at the moment, zoning of land vests in town, in the Town Planning Committee. We're now introducing another kind of zoning for commercial purposes, and that vests in the Minister responsible for financial services. Now, the bill does not address where there may be conflicts between the two. The minister might decide, well, this business could be carried on in this particular zone, and whereas that particular zone may have challenges for approval by the Town Planning Committee.
Mr. Davis says that he had hoped that the government would have taken time to consult more with the opposition as opposed to hastily passing the bill. He says it's unnecessary, especially considering that the main objective of the bill is to hasten the work permit process. Reporting for our news, I'm Jared Higgs.
Well, Immigration, Trade and Industry Minister Brent Simonet called Davis's comments regressive. April Sands has that angle.
Brent Simonet calling the PLP regressive in their attack on the Commercial Enterprises Bill.
One day after former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham ripped into the controversial Commercial Enterprises Bill put forth by the Minnis administration, Financial Services Minister Brent Simonet asserted that everyone is entitled to their own opinion. However, Simonet was not so forgiving of opposition leader Philip Davis' criticism of the bill, calling Davis' stance on the issue regressive.
What Mr. Davis of the PLP did was actually a very regressive move by threatening potential investors, which sends the message internationally that the PLP are against persons coming into the Bahamas to set up new businesses. So he and the PLP, by their moves, have taken the Bahamas back. And I question their motives, because obviously they don't want Bahamians to succeed if they themselves, as operatives, cannot succeed.
Simonet dismissed any suggestion that the bill would roll out the red carpet for foreigners and put Bahamian business owners at a disadvantage.
For instance, if you take captive insurance, there is no captive insurance here in any great extent. That will provide an opportunity for Bahamians to go into business.
Ingraham called the bill's $250,000 threshold too low, asserting he cannot swallow that for the Bahamas as a national policy. Foreigners can come in for only $250,000 and open businesses without the public knowing how many Bahamians will be employed. However, Simonet insisted it is not too low at all.
A lot of these businesses that we're talking about do not require a big setup. Like I mentioned, call centers. Due to our immigration policy, one of the leading hotel companies in the Caribbean did not set up their headquarters here because of immigration, some other and political issues. They went to another country. All that requires is a bank of computers, rented space, and some human beings. So when you talk about 250,000, that's why the limit is at that.
Despite tremendous pushback from the opposition and some members of the business community, the Commercial Enterprises Bill was passed in the House of Assembly. Reporting for our news, I'm April Sands.
In other news, former chairman of the Public Hospitals Authority, Frank Smith, will have to wait another day for the start of his trial. The trial that was set to begin this morning was adjourned to tomorrow after a court stenographer did not show up for the proceedings, prompting Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt to label it a historic development. Jasmine Brown reports.
Flanked by nearly a dozen supporters that included his legal team and members of his family, Smith made his way to court just before 10 a.m. After a nearly 2-hour wait, he would learn his trial would not begin as expected. Smith's trial date was set during an August 18th status hearing. A month earlier, the 52-year-old was arraigned on 13 counts of extortion, 1 count of attempted extortion, and 1 count of bribery. During Smith's status hearing, Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt said the case is one of national importance and needs to be completed before the end of the year. In court today, she reiterated that statement, saying it was for that reason it is vital a court stenographer be in place to record. Both the prosecution and defense agreed. Ferguson Pratt pointed out that she vacated her calendar to accommodate the matter and had every intention of sticking to the 3 days allocated for the trial. She also told the court that she wanted to be frank and revealed that prior to today, she had received a letter indicating the prosecution was not ready to proceed. However, she said she was not minded to accommodate the request and informed all parties that the case must go on as scheduled this morning. But it did not, and after a nearly 2-hour wait and a brief meeting in chamber with attorneys for both sides, including prosecutor Anthony Delaney and defense attorney Damian Gomez QC, Ferguson Pratt returned to the bench, telling the packed court that the matter would have to be adjourned to Wednesday morning due to the lack of a stenographer. Prosecutors alleged that Smith, who served as a PLP senator, demanded that Barbara Hanna pay him $5,000 per month for his assistance in helping her get a contract with the PHA. According to the prosecution, Smith received 13 extortion payments from April 2016 to April 2017. Smith is accused of attempting to extort $5,000 from Hanna during May 2017. Smith has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Now Smith is expected back in court tomorrow morning for the start of his trial. Reporting from the Magistrates Court Complex for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Still to come on our news, why the National Insurance Minister says a protest by employees was not justified. Plus, tuberculosis cases at R.M. Bailey increased. The details are after this break.